Disclaimer. This story contains mature themes, violence, and dark imagery. Listener discretion is advised. What you are about to hear is not a tale for children. It is a saga of shadows, crowns, and blood, told in parts yet woven as one single destiny. This is the Shadowland Saga, Heirs of the Shadow Crown. This is a dark fantasy epic, not of whimsical creatures or familiar spells, but of fractured empires and forbidden faiths. Here, what seems like magic is rare, and often carries secrets older than the world itself. The Shadowland is a realm poisoned by ancient wars, haunted by secret cults, and divided by a toxic sea. It is a tale of crowns and betrayal, of love and sacrifice, and perhaps of something far beyond fantasy itself.
Father, you know how much I love history and stories, don't you?
Asked the child, never guessing that these opening words would one day become history itself. Little Carl tossed back his messy hair and lifted his head proudly. In the eager gleam of his eyes shone both a child's innocence and the poise of an heir already shaped by noble training. The man before him was more than just his father, King Cassian, ruler of Lesation, the jewel of the Ion Empire, and head of the secret imperial intelligence, the XY. Yet at that moment, there were no crowns or thrones or titles, only a father and son sharing a quiet instant on a sunny day, with the reverent murmur of the Utmos River as their companion. During their peaceful walk along the riverbank, the sun flickered like gold across the water. A soft breeze drifted through the leaves. Time itself seemed to slow around them. The fragrance of blossoms announced the coming of spring, and the songs of birds wove nature's own music. But the king's mind wandered elsewhere. Lost in thought, he stared into the distance. For a moment, the boy wondered if his father had heard the question at all. Just as he was about to speak again, Cassian's gaze returned to him, a faint smile softening his face. In his eyes lingered the echo of a distant past.
"If you want an unforgettable tale,"
he said gently, his voice deep as water yet soft as wind,
"then listen to this. I doubt you have heard it before. It is very old, very dark. One day it may become a secret only you can bear. Are you sure you wish to hear it?"
The boy's curiosity was piqued. He met his father's eyes with excitement.
Go on, I'm ready.
And so the father began.
"Long ago, thousands of years before our empire was born, before children ran laughing across the meadows of Utira, the king of kings, the conqueror tyrant, Ula III, known also as Uel, Ueli Iron Fist, and the Shadow Emperor, united the four great realms, south, west, north, and east, beneath a single banner. Ula had never lost a war. With ruthless will and unmatched strategic genius, he subdued every resisting nation, conquering 2/3 of the known world beneath the shadow of his legendary sword, Bloodlight. Legend holds that this blade was a gift from star-born gods, bestowing power and glory upon Ula. But eventually, there remained no lands left to conquer. Wealth, fame, power, none of it satisfied him. Only one desire filled his mind: immortality. He tried every path, elixirs, rites, prophecies, mystical journeys, all in vain, until one night, a dream and a voice within gave him a new purpose. At dawn, he resolved to march with his armies to the shining city beyond the Mire Sea, a place from which none had ever returned. It is said he stood on the shore of that poisoned sea and proclaimed, "The promised lands lie beyond. I have seen them in a dream. I will cross the Mire Sea, reach the gods, and conquer their domain. My name will be carved on every temple and stone. The gods themselves will kneel to me as their king." His commanders shuddered and bowed, daring to protest. "My lord, the Mire Sea is no ordinary swamp. No ship can sail it, no man can walk it. Its surface is choked with mud, and no one knows what lies beneath. Even the suns seem to drown in its western haze. Beyond lie dead forests and misty marshes, and behind them snowy mountains and that ever-glowing city. But it can only be seen, never taken." Still, Ula would not turn back.
The child burst in eagerly.
Father, did they really cross the Mire Sea?
Cassian smiled at his impatience.
"Patience, my son. Patience will light the shadow." Yes,
He continued.
Ula did not retreat. He commanded colossal bridges to be built, forcing thousands of slaves to labor for years. At last, upon a road hardened with their very bones, he and his armies crossed the Mire Sea and never returned. But the bloodlight sword, it did return, washing up on the western shores. At the place where it was found, the first temple was built. Some say Ula and his armies ascended to the stars. Others believe they were cursed to eternal torment by the gods. Today, the ruins of that ancient capital, known as the ruins of Ula, lie in the hands of desert tribes beyond the southern ocean, while the first temple stands within our empire's borders. No one knows the fate of those in the story. Perhaps, Cassian mused, it is the invention of zealots. Remember, my son, always question the truth of the tales you hear. Maybe Ula was real, but myths grow, change shape, and turn into folk legends.
Why must it be exaggerated?
The boy challenged.
Building something like that, floating bridges across Mire, it isn't impossible, is it?
It defies reason,
The king replied.
The Mire Sea's air is poisonous. Its winds carry a metallic salt-like dust. Anyone breathing it dies in weeks, perhaps months. To dwell there long is unthinkable.
The boy grinned slyly.
Maybe the air was cleaner then?
Perhaps. Our written sources are few, the nearest only 2,000 years old. Myths pass mostly by word of mouth. You must choose what to believe. Even today,
Cassian added.
minor cults still worship Ula. They make pilgrimages to tombs and shrines said to hold his sword, most famously the first temple on the Mire Sea's shore. They believe he will return one day, bring ruin with his sword, overthrow corrupt rulers, and lead humanity to the gods. What do you think, my son? Will Ula return?
Ignoring the question Carl asked.
Has no one ever tried to steal the sword?
Not to my knowledge. It is an ancient relic, of little use to anyone but fanatics. Which sword is the real one is unclear. And in most of the empire, the Ula cult is deemed blasphemous. Few dare venture to those cursed lands. In every kingdom the cult wears a different face, he went on. Some call Ula a herald of the gods, some their son, some a god himself. Some believe he became divine after crossing the Mire Sea. But these groups live in secrecy, their temples remote, and their activities obscure. Hardly anyone cares. No sensible person approaches the Mire Sea. Even the pilgrims never stay long.
The boy drew a deep breath.
It's a fascinating tale. Father, do you believe in any myth at all?
Adults loving stories does not make them true.
Cassian said.
However convincing a tale, without evidence, it remains imagination, a dream of the past.
But isn't what we call truth and history just the stories we find most reasonable? Who can say we ourselves are not characters in a legend?
Carl asked with precocious insight. The king paused, a gentle smile on his face.
I don't like to think you're only a story, my son. But perhaps you are right. Some legends are more trustworthy because reason can test them, or because they leave traces behind. At least this I know. You have the makings of an emperor. I believe one day you will rule this empire. That is far more likely than Eula's return. Emperor Karl Kastisar I, the Wise. Has a fine sound to it, doesn't it?
Karl smiled sincerely.
Titles mean nothing to me, Father. I only wish to grow and learn everything.
You are already wise beyond your years.
The king laughed.
Just 11, yet your curiosity knows no bounds. Even Sila, the imperial librarian, despairs of keeping up with you. The philosopher Toln of Klaxis would have been proud to meet you and debate the nature of reality.
I would have loved that.
The boy said, blinking playfully, though I wonder if he would have taken a child seriously. After a moment's silence, Karl asked eagerly,
Will you ever take me to the first temple where Eula's sword is kept? Or to the ruins of the Old Kingdom?
Kasyan rested a hand on his son's shoulder and smiled.
Perhaps, when your beard grows and your hand is steady on a sword.
Karl wondered how many years he would have to wait. Patience was not his strength.
One last question, Father. Why do people invent such stories? I never realized grown-ups love fairy tales as much as children do.
Perhaps to find answers to questions we cannot otherwise explain. The unknown is frightening, my son, but stories bind people together.
The king lowered his head, meeting the boy's eyes.
Never underestimate the power of stories, my child.